You start.
Okay. Hello, everybody. How can I move that hand? I don't know. I shouldn't be looking at myself on the screen. Hello. Welcome to Dave and Cathy's Hobby Hangout, where we will be doing some sort of hobby thing, and we will talk about books we've read recently, and then we will have a talk about a wide subject that interests us. Today it's a pretty wide subject. We're going to be talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or MCU, which is a very large quantity of films that have come out since 2010. 10. Oh, okay, is it? Right.
2009.
Yeah, 9, okay. Yes. This has not been terribly well prepared. And also, this whole episode is actually a week later than we planned, because my work has been insane, because I deal with A-levels.
Watch it, Mr. Mammal.
I deal with A-levels for a living, so everything has been just very...
It's the important bits of me.
Everything's been very busy, because it's always busy in August, generally, and this year, which is a pandemic, and we're working from home, and there's been, perhaps somewhat less prep than there might have been. All the prep has been a lot more condensed, but then also the government were nonsense, as they so often are. And yes, a lot of problems with how they decided to do it. So, and now we're having to basically just redo a load of work that we should really have done a couple of weeks ago. But there we are.
We've already been corrected.
What?
Iron Man was 2009.
Okay, I thought it wasn't. Yeah, it was like that.
Okay.
It was what? Because I think it was a bit after I finished uni, but not that long after.
Okay. It's been a long time.
Remember we did that banner at uni where we put Iron Man on it, and we said, well, if people know who this is, then they should definitely join the group, and if they don't, it'll look like a robot anyway, so that's fine.
Yes.
It'll still indicate science fiction.
Very true. My work has also been crazy, but thankfully it's died off crazy, so...
It was bad timing, really, because we knew my work would be at least a little bit crazy, and It's been like double crazy.
I had to do a lot of training. When I say I had to do a lot of training, I had to provide the training to library staff on shorter notice than I was expecting. So that was interesting. But that we got that done. So now it's just back to when we open libraries, which I don't know.
Depends on the R number.
Find me a Magic 8 Ball that most likely has a better idea than pretty much anyone at the moment. Keeps coming up, ask again later. It's really annoying. So, what hobby crafty thing are you doing today?
I'm doing cross stitch, tapestry stitch. I'm doing something with yarn, which I don't normally do. I'm not normally a person who does things with yarn. Sure, it's not very visible. So it's a sort of square here. It's a thing called a brick, and I'm doing at the moment it's just a moon shape. So I've not really done this much before, but it's part of a very local history project called Home is Where the Arch Is, which is being done with one of the local churches, and also a company called Woolly Mammoth Stitch Works, which I don't know that kind of company existed before, but it's quite interesting. But yeah, basically there's an arch at one of the nearby churches, which is the oldest piece of architecture in Birmingham. It's not the oldest standing structure, because that is Willey Castle ruins, which I volunteer at normally when one can visit there. Well, sometimes I'm usually doing stuff online a bit more, but yeah. But yes, it's this very old bit of architecture that's like Norman in a local church. I think it's just the arch, and the rest of it is presumably been remodeled at various times. But yeah, so they wanted people to basically stitch a brick that will then be added, and I think they're going to put it around or over the arch somehow. But yeah, I sort of said I was interested, and they sent me this little pack through the post. So I've got my canvas and my very large unusual needle, and then I got sent 3 things of yarn. So I got yellow, so I'm doing a moon, and I've got dark blue, so I'm going to do a sky and then put some stars in it. I've also got a darkish green, which I think I might do for leaves or something around the edge. I'll figure that out. But yeah, so that's just a new thing I'm doing, but they kind of want it done. They said autumn, so I think probably in a month or so.
Yeah.
But they sent this nice little guide because they said beginners can do it, so they've got a little guide with lots of different kinds of stitches and things. And I think I did stuff like this a bit when I was younger. I seem to remember stuff with squares, so it's just sort of coming back to me remembering how to do it. So that's quite interesting. And there's also like because it's Heritage Week soon, obviously you can't visit things as easily, but there's some sort of like tour I think you can do. There's some sort of whole Northfield Revealed type thing, I don't know, but yes, but this is very local. You have to live within sort of 2 miles of the area, so yeah, that'll be interesting. Part of this though, you do have to write a little postcard message for a resident of this area in 100 years, and I'm like, what? And I'm like, well, I hope the human race still exists and the planet is habitable. After that, I'm not really sure what to suggest, you know. I hope you're still there and not suffering horribly. If you did, sorry, that was very much our fault, I suppose. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to worry about that later. Yeah, I'll do the stitching first. Yeah, I'll do the stitching first. That's calming. What are you doing?
I am currently building the right leg of my Sazabi. This is it has lots of parts, so I'm going to be doing this for because
at some point it will look like more of a robot.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment I have two kind of parts for the feet and two bits that go on the ankles. Yeah, I mean, sprue. You know, there's lots of parts to these things, so yeah. Well, this is a long running project, so my first extra piece. Yeah, there we go.
Yes, but I thought as this had a time limit, I'd do this, and also I know what thing I want to do next for my 12 Days of Christmas thing, but I haven't actually designed and cut out the pieces, and you can't really do the designing bit while we're doing this, so I have to do that later. I'm going to do a cow for the next bit, but I'll figure that out.
There we go. So, books. What have you been reading?
I have been reading, it looks quite big, but so this is The Complete Mary Poppins by P.L. Travers. So I think people generally know that Mary Poppins was a book that got turned into the Disney film. And there was quite a good film called Saving Mr. Banks about it, which had Tom Hanks and Emma Thompson. I couldn't remember the actress's name, which is ridiculous. I'm not doing well with remembering things recently. But actually there were 6 books. So this is actually, although it looks massive, this is actually like 6 children's books in it. Although the first 2 seem to be a good chunk of it actually, so I think the later ones are smaller. See, I read these when I was younger because I think I was unsurprisingly an avid reader as a child. And I think I heard, oh, you know, there are also books. But I started with the second one, which is Mary Poppins Come Back. Well, I said I started with them, it's just what I could find in the library, so I'm not sure I read them exactly in order, but I'd never actually read the actual Mary Poppins book, the first one, because I think I just assumed it'd be like the film. Actually, I've read it, it's quite different. There tends to be a reasonable sort of formulaic structure with them, although within that there's quite a lot of variety. Mary Poppins arrives. So something cryptic about when she will leave. The household, which has been somewhat in uproar, calms down. In the books, there are more children. There are 4 Banks children in the first book, and then that goes up to 5 in the second book. It's just they miss out the twins, and then later Annabelle. Although I haven't seen the new Mary Poppins film, which I'm interested to see. I have seen the stage show, and the stage show is kind of like a mixture of the sort of the first 2 books and stuff from the films. So I did go see that with some family. That was interesting. But yeah, there's sort of like then there'll be various things. There'll be like Mary Poppins constantly. There are like magical, improbable things happening around her. Like they'll go and visit a relative, and there'll be something very odd that happens with that. It usually defies the laws of physics or gravity. And then later the children will make comment to it, and Mary Poppins will be a bit like, "How dare you say something so insulting and strange about my relatives?" Because she always just denies everything and she never explains anything. Which kind of works. It's a bit like all this magical stuff happens and it's never ever explained. And it's like, that's fine. You know, that's the whole thing. Or like she'll go on an evening out and then Jane and Michael will follow her somehow. And then and they'll be like at a zoo where the animals and the people are reversed, or like in the sky. There'll usually be a bit where somebody sort of shows up and Mary Poppins tells a story from like long ago, which is often think quite often based on nursery rhyme or some sort of something like that. Obviously, these were written quite a long time ago, so the some of the references are sort of quite dated. The language isn't too bad. There are a few things that are a bit like, oh, that's not the best thing to say.
Mothra.
Yes, it's a very small moth. Although it's supposed to be quite big if it's to scale with your robot. Yeah, so I mean they're quite easy to read. I mean the book's big, but they're quite easy to read. Sort of like kid stories that if you accept, they are a little old-fashioned. Some of the language is either something you don't really recognise or something that's not great. But it's not been too bad for that, if I'm honest. The character of Bert, for example, obviously played by Dick Van Dyke in the film. He sort of seems to be an amalgamation of various like men that are around the street. There's a lot more community to the book, so it's about 17 Cherry Tree Lanes where the Banks family live, but there's lots of stuff about their neighbours who also live on the same street. So there'll usually be a chapter that's about one of them and their stuff. There'll usually be like, I mean, Mary Poppins takes the children to some sort of very weird business run by people she knows, and then something magical happens. All of this, but it's nice, and I just needed something that was quite simple to read because everything else is so very tiring. Yeah. Fun. How about you?
I have been reading, or I have finished reading, The Cathedral of Known Things by Edward Cox, which I appreciate is backwards compared on the screen because cameras.
Was the murkiness going to make things less backwards?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a different thing altogether. So yes, this is the second book in the Relic Guild series by Edward Cox. So back when, let's see, just to open this.
It was just a fantasy con.
It was a fantasy con, yes, but it was the.
One of the fantasy cons. Which one? Where were we? Were we in Brighton or was it not Brighton?
2014 fantasy con.
I can't remember if that was Brighton or not Brighton.
That was. I think it was Brighton.
Okay.
2015 was Nottingham. I think it was a Brighton one.
Oh yeah, and then obviously 16 was Scarborough because I was pregnant.
Yeah. Anyway, so 2014 we were at FantasyCon, and we went to was it a Super Relaxed Fantasy Club?
Oh, I think it was one of the early ones. Yeah, but it was that's the only one we've been to because obviously the one in London.
So the runs in London. There is a group called Super Relaxed Fantasy Club. Which is basically you can get together and authors will go and do a reading. Sounds great fun. It's in London. That's a bit of a shame. If anyone from Super Relaxed Fantasy Club is listening and wants to bring it up to Birmingham,
I think I did suggest that at one point.
Anyway, I
think one person once did one in like Sheffield or something. So, but yeah.
I mean, obviously after the current situation's over. So anyway, so we were at this, and it was quite a few people, and.
Is that the one where I got everyone to clap for you when I said that you worked in a library?
Yeah, it was.
There were a lot of very bookish people. Most of them either had books.
Yeah, I was in a room, quite a big room, around the outside. And everyone was basically saying who they were and basically why they're. And it was pretty much everyone was going, "Hi, I'm and I'm either writing my novel or I've got something published or I've got something out." And I was right towards the end. It's like, "Hi, I'm David. I like books."
I read things.
I read things. So yes, Cathy then pointed out.
And I was like, but he works in a library though, and the whole room applauded for him.
Yeah, I don't know whether that was out of sympathy or what, but
no, because they know librarians are an important part of getting books to people.
So anyway, so actually
you just trained a load of people to do. In fact, you trained a load of people to get books to people.
Yeah, that's what I did. So so this was had some authors reading. I can't remember.
I think Ed Cox did.
Ed Cox, Laura Lamb?
Yes.
Laura Lamb?
Anyway, I think so.
It's like a few selections.
The one with the conjoined twins, was it?
Yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, Edward Cox read the first chapter of The Relic Guild, which is the first book in that. And I really enjoyed it. It kind of, I don't know, it was just something about it I really enjoyed. Later, the next day, we were given access to a big pile of books.
Often happens at cons.
Oh, yeah. On the understanding that we would do a review of one of the books in there.
I used to do quite a bit of reviewing for the British Fantasy Society, although I've kind of tailed off on that a bit in recent years. But yeah. And
in that bag was the Relic Guild. So I went, yoink. And then I promptly read it because it was very good.
And then you got the sequel.
So yes, I literally read it in a day, which I very rarely do with books. And it's I'm not sure how to describe it really. Fantasy. It's about the Relic Guild, who are. I should have really brought the Relic Guild down so I could have read the blurb off the back. That would have been more sensible than telling you all about the second one, which is very good, but gives away some spoilers for the first one. It's very good. I was thinking earlier why
Did I just do?
why I particularly enjoyed it, and I can't put my finger on it. It's easy reading. The characters are engaging.
Is it secondary world fantasy?
Secondary world fantasy. So it's based around Labyrinth Town. This town surrounded by labyrinth that is kind of cut off from the rest of their world. Looked after by the resident who lives in this. It's kind of like 40 years after a big war between what could best described as elves and super mages, and the humans are kind of left in this place for reasons. And it's about the Relic Guild, who are supposed to hunt down rogue magic users and artifacts and basically try and keep Labyrinth Town from blowing up. And then bad things happen to Labyrinth Town and the people there. But as I say, it doesn't. I wouldn't say it particularly is groundbreaking, but it's just fun. It's a good read. Yeah. So yes, and then the sequel. I picked that up as the Nottingham Fantasy Con. Yeah, because it was released at FantasyCon. So I got it signed by. I was really looking forward to reading it, and then didn't for 5 years.
Perils of the TBR path.
Yeah, I started it. I got about 2 chapters in, put it down for some reason, never picked it up again. So I was looking.
But that's not an indictment of the book. It's
that was definitely not, because as soon as I picked it up again, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Went all the way through. So yeah, if you get an opportunity, The Relic Guild by Edward Cox, definitely worth a look. And then there's also, that's the second one, and the third one is, cannot remember. It's on my birthday list.
All right, sure. I haven't looked at that recently, so I don't.
I already recently put it on.
That would also make sense.
Yeah, so there we go. Your local library may end up with a copy, because we actually have 2, so I really should give one to a library.
Sure, yes. Okay. I need to do that with now. It depends on a book I bought an extra of accidentally or asked for one.
Yeah.
So, I need to just give that to a library.
We have a lot of books upstairs that need to go to a library.
We also do forget one of the MK Jensen ones as well, don't we?
Because sometimes we don't check our shelves when we buy books.
That is a thing that happens. The shelves are spread over,
the
whole
house.
Yeah,
we need to work on our shelves at some point.
I was going to say, I have had a professional library staff person in the house for like months now. Should not have already been sourcing.
Yes. Anyway.
Yes.
Onwards.
Sure, yes.
To our topic. We decided we would attempt to talk about the entire of the MCU, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But actually, what we're going to do is have a bit of an overview, and a bit of a...
We discussed that this is one of the... There's a few sort of topics we could talk about that are actually big enough media things or book series and stuff that we'll probably need to kind of go into the sort of particular threads within them. And the MCU is one of those, so, we'll probably go into like the sort of strains of films within series of films within them.
Yeah.
I think that was a word for how that is anyway. But yeah, there's sort of, I guess characters within them a bit more. But we thought we'll do an overview because we have not prepped, but we have watched all these films over the last 12 years, as it turns out. Have we watched all of them?
Yes.
Yes. I'm not sure we missed one. No, because lockdown happened for everyone.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a couple we didn't see in the cinema, but that was because like we had a baby.
So one we didn't see in the cinema.
Oh, was it one?
Yeah,
oh, Ant-Man and the Wasp, wasn't it?
No, two.
Yeah, two.
Yeah. Ant-Man and the Wasp and Spider-Man Far From Home.
Also, it's not MCU, but we didn't see Into the Spider-Verse in the cinema.
Yeah, which is kind of a bit of a disappointment.
I feel like there wasn't a huge amount of buzz about that beforehand, and then suddenly everyone was talking about their spider soldiers
Just to clarify, it was disappointing we didn't see it at the cinema. It is a very good film.
It's a really excellent
Really good film.
Our son is now quite obsessed with Spider-Man, which I think is probably most of the cartoons you were showing him, but like the serialised ones. But I think that film.
I'm good with that, to be honest.
Yeah. Hence the part of the Spider-Man comics.
Yeah, Spider-Man comics over there.
Through, that I've not checked yet, and probably should do. It's quite.
They're mostly all right.
Okay. Anyway, yes.
So yeah, shall I give a brief?
Yeah, you do that. You're as a friend of ours once said when we were all leaving the cinema after I think Spider-Man film group. I need to speak to Marvel Boy. I don't know if Greg knew that that's also a Marvel character, but I'm sure you could have explained to him.
I could.
It was just funny. Yeah, because when they were first doing a lot of superhero films, and we were like in university and going with friends in uni and stuff, and it was mostly kind of like X-Men and Spider-Man and stuff. People would just like ask Dave afterwards, like, so which bit from the comic was this, and which bit was different? So yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, in some respects, it's different. You know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is different. Where would we be without it? And it's had a huge impact on movies and cinema.
Various people's careers.
Yeah, various people's careers. So yeah, it's one of these strange ones of there was life before the MCU.
Well, like we said, we sort of at one point in I think it would have been 2006, were saying that people will probably just think this picture of Iron Man is a robot, but it kind of works either way. It's like, well, now people know who Iron Man is, because I didn't know who Iron Man was until I met Dave and he explained.
So yeah, so if back in the day, back in the 90s.
We're
going back that far. Marvel was strapped for cash. So strapped for cash that they almost went bankrupt. In an attempt to avoid going bankrupt, they sold off a lot of the big name, the rights to a lot of the big name characters at the time. So X-Men, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Blade. Not entirely sure on that one, but anyway. X-Men, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four.
Are you just trying to think of films that came out?
Blade. No, the Marvel ones at the time.
Yeah.
So the big three being X-Men, Spider-Man, and Fantastic Four.
Well, because Fantastic Four had a bad run of it, really, haven't they?
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily good films that came. But anyway, so they were. So they'd sold those ones off, and they'd sold them pretty heavily bad. Well, not badly, but they weren't getting them back. That there was. They
didn't have creative control.
They had no control. They had no. They basically if it was a bad guy or a character that was featured in X-Men or Spider-Man, the companies had the movie rights.
Yeah.
Even newly introduced ones since the movie rights were sold went with them as well.
It's not one of the reasons that the Fantastic Four doesn't do so well, because Marvel were like, if you introduce this in this comic, we won't own the film rights, so don't do that.
They had a lot of problems.
They
had a lot of problems with certainly, when you take the X-Men with it, who like to introduce a lot of characters. They were a bit cautious about introducing too many new characters because they simply wouldn't have the rights to them. And so if they became very popular, they couldn't monetize them through movies. But then again, at the time, it was either that or go bankrupt. So, long story short, they didn't go bankrupt. And they were coming up to, and obviously in the 2000s, you had the X-Men films were the two X-Men films were excellent. Two Spider-Man films were pretty good. The Tobey Maguire ones. We don't talk about the third movies of those franchises.
Well, we did the last time.
Yeah, I know we did.
They've had some therapy. I guess. Not really therapy.
The Blade ones were alright, Fantastic Four ones, yeah. But anyway, they were doing okay, and obviously they got rebooted and a couple of few times. Yeah. But obviously,
was it Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, which I've heard people talk about on podcasts?
we don't talk about that one. That was terrible.
I think that was just yeah.
That was just to keep the license.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, Marvel wanted to get in on the movie making scene, but the big characters were gone. So, Hulk, because obviously Hulk came up, the Hulk film. That was another one that they saw.
I thought that was a Marvel one.
No, not the one that we haven't.
Yeah, the one I haven't seen, the Ang Lee one.
Yeah, that.
But I thought Marvel just did that.
No.
I thought it was one of their early things, like around the time of Daredevil. No. Oh. Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, they wanted to get in on it. So they chose to do Iron Man.
So they did Daredevil and Electra first.
Yeah, we don't talk
Those
about
were early.
Yes, but they wanted to hit some big names. Iron Man is not a big name in the comics. Well, it wasn't, is now, but he wasn't a big seller.
Like I say, you saw a picture and you're like, oh, it's a robot.
He was part of the Avengers. He had his solo titles, but he wasn't the linchpin of the Marvel universe. There's lots of other characters out there. But instead they decide to. Their first movie out of the gate was going to be Iron Man, and the big plan was to do an Avengers film after doing 5 origin story films, and then 5 origin story films, and then a big ensemble Avengers film. And everyone at the time told them they were nuts. Because it's something that had never been done.
In Western cinema, anyway. Or
true, but
Anglophone Western cinema. I don't really know enough about films that aren't English to know if that's true or not.
You had.
So let's just not. Yeah.
You've had some. In some respects, you've had some cinematic. Bond. The Bond. Bond is a universe.
That's like an ongoing franchise.
But that's He
just changes face slash actor every so often.
Yeah. Much like Mission Impossible. You've had the ones that are kind of very linear. They're sequels. They fit into the same world. Previously you hadn't really had 5 disparate film franchises coming together.
Well, I think that was the thing.
I might have counted wrong, Manor.
Yeah, I
Iron
think
Man,
you said 5.
Hulk, Captain America, Thor.
Yeah,
Thor.
It's
Okay.
4. Yeah, well, I think that the 5th one was the So yeah, they start with Iron Man. I think the thing is, because what happened was, so they started with Iron Man, and that was quite popular, and then obviously Robert Downey Jr. was at that point, I think, at a low ebb in his career, but was quite good casting because Iron Man also had been at Hulk, and stuff, and
Secretary of Defence, but I don't believe Robert Downey Jr. has been Secretary of Defence.
No, I mean, I was just mentioning thing. But Robert Downey Jr. I think at that point was mostly, sort of seen as somebody who was involved in like quite independent arty films, and and he wasn't like an action guy, really, and that sort of thing. But let's face it, he did capture the character real well and made it real good. And they also did stuff like, Tony Stark says he's Iron Man at the end of the first film. So I'm not going to have a secret identity, because apparently in the comics he did for a while, and he pretended that Iron Man was his bodyguard.
that just got ridiculous.
Oh, okay, sure. So that was enjoyable. And then you have, so the Hulk,
Hulk was next.
Yes. Were they actually in order on our DVD shelf?
They are in order on our DVD shelf, yes.
Our DVD shelf is not at the right angle. I can't read it from here.
Hulk,
yes.
Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, Avengers.
Wasn't Iron Man 2? Oh, was Iron Man 2 right after that?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Anyway. Yeah. So, it's interesting because they are all quite totally different. So you had, like, Iron Man, which is your kind of, like... I mean, there were a lot of original stories except for Hulk, because Hulk, obviously, they kind of took that one that I haven't seen, the Ang Lee one, that people seem very upset about, and something to do with dogs. And kind of, like, I think just they had recast it as Ed Norton, Ed Norton wanted to think a lot of creative control. I mean, Ed Norton's an interesting actor, range of stuff he does, but they kind of had a bit of a sort of like how the Hulk interacts with like General Ross, who at least shows up a bit more in the MCU, and I think it has stuff to do with like the super serum. So he tries to recreate it, and that's how the bag comes back, which then kind of ties into Captain America. But it's interesting because you got Iron Man, which was this origin story of this sort of like more techie Batman, because Batman's either a detective or a thug, depending on how you do it. And I read a very interesting thread about that recently, because obviously there's a lot of Batman discussion on the internet at the moment, which, okay, fine. I still like the ones on Mark, shit, but yes. So you've got kind of like techie, reformed arms dealer, billionaire, superhero. And then the Hulk was kind of like a continuation of like, the Hulk, and like he's on the run, and then he hulks out. Then it was Captain America next, you say. Well, it was Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 was a continuation. Captain America's obviously it's an origin story, but it's in the 40s. So that's a different sort of. Also, at the time, it had like the bloke who'd been the Human Torch, who was this like cocky jerk in the Fantastic Four film that came out a few years before. And I haven't watched those again since. I think I'd find it very weird if I did, because obviously we all quite like Chris Evans now, and he does seem to have been a Chris who, though not, I don't think he's best Chris, but he's certainly much. Or is he best Chris? I think it's between him and Chris Pines. I understand it. I'm pretty sure Chris Pines in different universe. He's definitely not worse.
He's best Chris.
Okay. And I think Chris Pine's been alright as well.
Okay. But he's not Chris Evans. Chris Evans is best Chris. But not that Chris Evans.
He has the same name as
he's not best Chris.
As a UK. Oh no. Is Jan supposed to do this? I just pulled it.
Don't worry.
It's probably fine. I'm still getting the hang of this. Like, the front looks alright, and the back I'm like, is this right? I guess as long as the front looks fine, it's fine. Anyway. So that happened, but then that was really good, because it's kind of like, again, Captain America first, you're a bit like, is this going to be very patriotic, like that bit in Spider-Man 3, where he's running across the rooftops, and suddenly he pauses in a posy type attitude, there's a US flag behind him, and you're like, you realise the rest of us aren't in that country. It's like, oh, look, it's that flag again. Yes, alright, we know where New York is, thank you. Yes. That sort of thing. So it's always a bit like, is it going to be a bit cringy, and a bit like, overly enthusiastic? But actually, they managed to make it fine.
Yeah, balance it well.
They had stuff that did look a bit cheesy, but that was all references to stuff, and then, it's just like he's a very decent guy who, wants to help and stuff. And they also had Peggy Carter, who was amazing and great. So, yes. What was the thing? I wanted to watch the thing where Haley Atwell was in like modern clothes, and I was like, what's happening here? I was like, I mean, I'm not always good at recognising faces. I know they're familiar, but not where they're from. And I was just like, oh god, it's Haley Atwell. It's Peggy Carter. Why is she wearing jeans? Which is probably a bit silly. It's just she's always in period clothes and things I see her in otherwise. But yeah.
And then you got to Thor.
That was good. And then Thor, which was weird.
Which is Viking space gods. Norse space gods. Yes. But still.
Yeah, which was odd because, it's directed by Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah.
The comic book Thor is quite...
These and thous all over the
place.
Yeah,
it's sort of like cold Shakespearean.
But in space.
Mythological. Well, it's kind of like weird cosmic stuff, isn't it? It's kind of like... Well, it's science fantasy, isn't it? So, like, they're in space, but there's also quite obviously magic. And that's fine. And I'm for that, because, obviously, the most popular, long-running science fiction TV show in our country is basically science fantasy. Yeah, so, but yes, so that felt like it was a bit odd. Chris Hemsworth wasn't particularly well known, nor was Tom Hiddleston. No. But that was fine. But then you're there thinking, well, these are all pretty good films, considering we didn't really know the characters that well before. But like, how is this all going to work as like all of them coming together? The tones are so different.
I think the thing that helped them a lot was the end of credit scenes. So each of the films had an end of credit scene that linked it to...
I think them casting Samuel L. Jackson was also pretty important.
Well, yeah.
Which again was based off a comic thing.
It's either him or David Hasselhoff. It was going to be one of the two of them. So it linked them David Hasselhoff played.
Yeah, no, I know he played him in again, one of the weird ones from the 90s or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I tried watching it, couldn't manage it. So that helped link them together in a way that made it feel like they were the same universe. And so while they didn't have, and it was just, they had their writing team, and they had someone overviewing it. Mm-hmm. So they made sure that things did link up, that references were...
If you do rewatches, you do see there's quite a few things that kind of carry you, which you wouldn't think of noticed if you watch them separately, like, a few years apart in cinema, but yeah. It helps
build the actual universe.
Yeah.
So when they actually did get together, it wasn't it wasn't jarring. It just kind of made sense.
I think everyone who kind of liked the previous ones were just really wary about it. Like, is this going to be fine, or is it going to be like a bit? And a lot of people were very concerned it'd just be Iron Man and Friends, because Iron Man at that point had 2 films. But it wasn't. Everyone kind of had their space. Everyone had their line. Everyone had their thing that they could do in it.
And they even managed to,
so that's pretty
and they introduced more characters at the same time.
True. Well, I mean, both Hawkeye and Black Widow had been in previous ones, but because obviously Black Widow was an Iron Man too.
Hawkeye hadn't been.
Hawkeye was the bloke who was had the arrow and pointed at Thor's hammer in Thor when Coulson was introduced.
Okay, but not exactly.
I mean, he wasn't like a character; he was just like a bloke hanging around with a bow and arrow. But you knew they had a bloke who hanged around with a bow and arrow.
Fair enough.
I don't know how much more you need to know about Hawkeye.
I must have missed that bit.
I mean, well, you watched it quite a while ago. No,
we are due a rewatch. We haven't watched them for a while.
You're a baby. I barely have time to watch like news.
Things. So they managed to, suddenly they managed to pull this all together, and it was a long film, but it had.
Yeah, I think most people were pretty impressed. I mean, I know some people who, I guess, are perhaps a little more refined than us with certain things. We're a bit like, oh, it's very televisual, and I'm like, okay, fair enough. We enjoyed it though. So so at that point, I think then it's like they've set out their stall. They've proved they can do this. They might as well see where they can go, and obviously they have. So you've got kind of the 4. Well, I say the 4. Hulk doesn't get another film, but he features prominently in, the most recent Thor one.
Yeah. So they go and give everyone a second film, leading up to Avengers 2. But they also start throwing in other. So let's just check our reference material. So yes, we have Iron Man 3.
That was quite a good one.
Yeah.
To go after, because obviously Avengers was this whole like aliens are coming to. Oh, and this is going to be spoilery, but these films were out like a decade ago, so aliens have come and they've beat them back, and mind control, a big spectacle-y thing. But the person who was least prepared to be shot through a portal into space was Tony Stark. Well, maybe the Hulk. Well, you don't really know how the Hulk feels about things when he's the Hulk, besides angry. But like Thor's from space. Captain America had army training. Black Widow and the Hawkeye are both trained operatives. So it was basically just Tony Stark who was like the least equipped for that. It's like, off you go into space now for a moment, and Tony has bad luck in space, doesn't he?
He doesn't have.
He doesn't do well from space.
No.
But yeah. So, and also the fact that he is the least prepared person, and probably also the person who I don't think has had as much therapy as he should have done.
No,
really, considering his origin story had a slightly traumatic thing as well happen. He ends up being. It's all about him having panic attacks, and so it becomes a very personal story. And they kind of take all of the Iron Man stuff away from him, and he has to kind of rebuild. And like, there's a small child in the film, and you're like, oh no, there's gonna be a small child. But actually, that was fine. It wasn't like saccharine or cute. It was just like, and it's like him figuring stuff out, and also the fact that past stuff from when he used to be much more of a jerk, came back to kind of bite him and stuff. I have seen there's somebody suggested a different order of the films, which Iron Man 3 could come later, which kind of makes Age of Ultron more poignant, and that does make sense. But I think this way also makes sense. Like, because a lot of people are like, how are they going to top that? It's like, well, it's not about topping it; it's about like reframing it.
Yeah.
The second Captain America was really good, and also that tied into them. That
we're missing. Yeah, we're missing. So the next one was Thor: The Dark World.
Oh, was it? Okay. I liked that, but I see why people didn't.
I think,
and in fairness,
there was. I think basically.
I think at that point you just wanted more Loki.
I think as well.
And unfortunately, it was kind of the high point because after that, Loki kind of they were a bit like, we're just not bothering what he's doing. I'm like, oh shit.
Natalie Portman got kind of shafted with that one.
Yeah, that wasn't great for her.
She was brought. She signed up to come back on board with the understanding that there would be that she'd not quite get her choice of director, but you know there would be a director.
She'd have more influence and stuff.
Well, it was the director. It was based on the director they had at the time.
Sure.
Who was a woman. I can't remember who it was now.
Okay.
But you know, but they then left. So kind of Natalie Portman was kind of stuck in doing a film without the, you know,
not the conditions that she kind of wanted.
Kind of coming into it, and you kind of feel that she was, you know.
In fairness, the weak part of the 4 films is quite often the humans. I have watched those films, and if you fast forward through most of the human bits, they're quite enjoyable. They're fun, but like, they're much like actually, well, I suppose with Norse mythology, like. They don't seem to be quite, like, a lot of the Greco-Roman stuff, they're quite often humans about doing things. And I feel with Norse stuff there is every so often, but, like, sometimes there's, oh, we'll go to a place, we met a person, this happened. It's like, oh, because my son continues to be an officer. It's like, was this a human or not a human? And I don't really know, I mean, I don't know much about it compared to, like, Greco-Roman stuff. But yeah, it just always feels a bit more like it's based on gods and stuff than as much human stuff. But that's a slight side thing. Yeah. Although the thing the 4 films never understand is, like, Thor is there going, oh, yes, my brother Loki, and then Eric Selvig, who's, like, Scandinavian, is a bit like, oh, you want to watch out for that guy? And I'm like, how do the myths of humans know that Loki is bad if Asgardians don't? And you shouldn't really think that much about it because it's a comic book film.
Yeah, comic book film. So so Thor: The Dark World. Yeah, that was.
I quite liked the family dynamic of it. I quite like the bits where, like, Thor and Loki are literally just bickering about stuff, and it's like, you're doing this all wrong. It's like, I'm the one of the two of us that knows how to fly. It just felt like very realistic sibling bickering. The fact that their mum got an increased role was good. The fact they fridged her was not. Although I suppose it was quite poignant because you saw that it's like, oh, it's not like Loki doesn't care about anyone. He definitely loves his mum. Yeah. Like he's there going, oh, Odin is my father. And she's like, does that mean I'm not your mother? And he's like, this would literally never have occurred to me. Of course you're my mother. It also kind of highlights the fact that, like, Loki is the black sheep, but, like, he can still maybe be trusted by his brother and you're not sure. And, like, is he actually evil or is he just, like, being manipulated in the previous film, all that sort of thing? Well, I mean, he was manipulating as well. But, yeah, it's sort of... yeah, it just I think it kind of compelled his character, which is why I feel that kind of like after what happened in that film, I kept anytime there's any mention of Asgard stuff, I'm like, oh, what's happening? And then I feel like they kind of squandered. Like I know Thor Ragnarok was going its own way, but I was like, oh, I kind of wanted to know what he was actually.
Patty Jenkins, thank you.
Oh yes, okay.
Yeah, I think you're right.
If he just our researcher, should we start crediting him?
Yeah, we should restart crediting him in the movie. But yeah, no, I think you're right. Patty going to be Patty Jenkins.
That does sound familiar now you say it, yeah.
To be honest, I'd really be interested in seeing a film, a Thor 2 done by Patty Jenkins. I'm kind of. It's kind of a bit of a shame that we never got to see that.
Yes.
Because I think you would have had the bits you've enjoyed.
Yeah.
Possibly more of them.
Yeah.
And possibly less.
They did well. See, the evil elf thing. They did the exact same thing with Chris Eccleston as they did in The Dark Is Rising, which is where they're like, I want the darkness. My motivation is darkness. I'm going to be sinister and just go on about darkness quite a bit. Except in that one, they gave him a language to do and put makeup on him, which they didn't in The Dark Is Rising. But it's a shame because if you've seen Elizabeth, you know that Chris Eccleston can do menacing really well, even when wearing ridiculous like Tudor breeches. So you know. It's one of these things. It's a bit like you had Chris Eccleston, and you didn't make the best use of him, but all right. Yeah.
But anyway, so yes, Thor: The Dark World, bit of a mixed bag on that one.
Oh, I just realized, sorry, because somebody's saying name. A correction for the last episode, which I should have done at the front and just forgot. At one point, I referred to an actress as being Sophie Okonedo. It was in fact Nina Sazanya, which I had to check later. I think I just have in my head that they're both like quite talented Black British actresses who are in quite a wide range of things. Because Nina Sazanya also is the narrator in Moon and Me and plays Will's mum in the BBC version of His Dark Materials.
Right. Okay.
Should have put that at the front. I need to remember these things more.
Okay. So next up, we did have the second Captain America one.
See, that was very exciting because by that point, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show was on, and I know a lot of people were a bit like. I think the problem was when they first marketed, they were like, "Oh, we'll get to see loads of like the people from the films, but like in the TV show," and then they're like, "These actors have not signed on for this; they're film actors." Except like Clark Gregg, obviously, and you didn't get that much Kobe Smulders, really, did you? No. But it was good, but that was very tied up. So like when Thor: The Dark World happens, they're there in London cleaning up all the dark elf stuff. But I quite it was charming and it was fun and yeah, it sort of seemed a bit cutesy. I think the problem was that you didn't know what was coming, and then suddenly you watch Captain America, and I think the timing for this almost worked better in Britain than America, which is unusual. And then sometimes you're like, oh, because that was basically like this sort of spy thriller thing. Where it's like, oh, the big benevolent organisation is in fact infested by a secret evil organisation, and now it's gone. And yeah, so that was quite like, and then you're like, what's happening in the TV show? And then the TV show is just like, we've taken a left turn. And it's like, and the most boring character turned out to be evil, which vindicated me because I didn't like him because he was boring, and then I didn't like him because he was evil. So
yeah, so that was that Winter Soldier, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And
also
then
introduced the Winter Soldier.
Then was the first of the new ones.
And many ships were launched.
Yeah. We may have to hurry this up. We're all running out of time.
Okay, maybe we should have done this. Yeah, a little bit less film by film. Oh well.
We'll just have to do a second one at some point.
Okay.
Or we could sort of draw back and go, okay.
Yeah, maybe we'll just take a wider view.
So basically, they then throw in. I'm just going to say because this is the next out of left field. They throw in Guardians of the Galaxy,
which is in space, but not like Thor's bit of space. Like
they go and
bit
get
of space.
James Gunn and go, here, have some characters that most Marvel fans won't even recognise because they're often cosmic stuff and
One of them's a raccoon, one of them's a sentient tree.
And he comes out with a stunning film with a great soundtrack, great characters. And it's like, okay.
And at this point, it's a bit like, oh, because I think, like with Thor: Dark World, a lot of people are like, oh, it's not that good. It was actually a perfectly fine film. It just wasn't as good as stuff that came around it. Every time I did something, people would be like, oh, this seems like it's a bit of a risky thing and no one knows what it is. And then it's like, but they did it well again. I think with Marvel, like you said, there's a lot of focus on the story. So even though stuff feels quite disparate, there's like it's all in the same universe and central thing, which is kind of how the comics work, isn't it? Really. So they kind of have that as it's part of the medium of the original going into the adaptation. Not the medium, the I guess the tone or the sensibilities or something. But yeah, so that I think. It sort of impressed people, and again, it was more irreverent and stuff. But saying that, there is stuff like the Ant-Man film. The reason that came so late because for ages Edgar Wright was working on one for ages and ages and ages, and it fell apart. And I get the impression that they kind of very much had a Marvel thing. So I mean, there's the Marvel film ending because the end of most of the films is a bit like there is something in the sky fastening a city. Let's not let it fall. And that was the end of so many of the films, it became the Marvel film ending. So I think although there was quite a lot of disparate settings and characters and tones, there was also a certain amount of like, this is how we do these. Like I don't think the tone diverges too widely within the series. So, which I think, I think some people felt like maybe that wasn't so good for directors who had very much their own vision, which I guess obviously the issue of Wright and probably also Jenkins. So there is that to an extent. I mean, the Russo brothers then came in, so they did Winter Soldier. Yeah. And they've done well with the stuff they've done.
I think because they were willing to work with what work within the. I suppose also a little bit towards the end. Once you hit Guardians of the Galaxy, I think they realised that they could do more. Even Winter Soldier, they went, well, we're going to do a spy thriller for Captain America. and then and so they've started to realise, well, actually we can do slightly different tonally things.
Yeah.
And people are going to still.
People are still going to come and watch the film.
And
because they like our brand and stuff.
And there's
which is what you want.
Yeah, and I mean, in the end, yes. I think that the most, I'll say worst one. If you thought the Dark World is not necessarily people's favourite. Not many people have a huge fondness for Doctor Strange, which is all right. But the point is, they were all pretty good films. They were good films.
Yeah.
They just weren't possibly up to the same standard.
Well, I thought it was interesting. Because Age of Ultron, I think after this, because that was the next Avengers one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think after the success of the Avengers / Avengers Assemble, as the UK name is, people were expecting quite big things, and Age of Ultron was a bit like, what's going on here? So that was a bit like, there was a lot happening, and I mean, it brought about the Vision, it introduced us to Wanda and Pietro, and so we had Scarlet Witch, and very briefly, Quicksilver, who was never actually called that. It kind of expanded stuff for like Black Widow and Hawkeye, who hadn't had their own films at that point. At one point, everyone except Hawkeye got mind control, because Hawkeye's name was mind controlled in the Avengers. They had Ultron, and he was like a bad guy, but it was weird. He's an angry robot guy. But it didn't come together quite as well as we're expecting, and then so I think we're all a little bit warier then. So then when you got to Civil War, that felt really good because it was much better than Ultron.
Yes.
Ultron introduced various people and sort of showed some stuff that was fun, but it wasn't quite, it wasn't quite as good. But again, it's still like
I think again it was.
But that did also subvert the Marvel endings. It's a bit like, something in the sky above a city. No, we're not doing that now. Now the city's in the sky above like a country or something, and that's going to fall. It's like, why is it always the sky? What did the sky do to everyone?
I think. But at that point, everything was then a step on the road to the last two films.
Yeah, everything was like the road to Infinity War, wasn't it? So they started. So that they decided. Initially it was they were just going to do comic. We have to do a big crossover.
They were just going to do the Avengers film, but eventually they go, no, we're actually going to do the Infinity War, and that's a big. So they just. But
bear in mind, they did obviously. Sorry, yeah.
It's a big story with a big bad guy. And but then they start seeding things in.
They introduced Thanos, didn't they, in Avengers? But just as a who's that?
So
It's like the guy behind Loki. Loki clearly wasn't pleased about it. Like Loki's there going, "Oh, I'm in charge, and you should kneel to me." But he just looks sad every time it happens. Like
anyway,
this isn't how I wanted.
So the Marvel Cinematic Universe is vast, and we could go on for a long, long time.
This is true. We probably should have decided on themes we talk about more rather than just going through films.
Okay, so let's go back. Out of all of them, which is your favourite?
I don't know.
Yeah, you see, you've got to answer that question first now. If I've asked you, so it gives me time to think about to answer it, or not.
I'm not. Well, I'm not sure that really quite works. Sorry, I'm very confused with yarn because it's thread. You have to knot it, and this is just supposed to kind of catch the previous one. And there was an illustration. I didn't understand it.
Okay.
I don't think I have a favourite one. It's a bit. I mean, like they've all got their own thing. Captain America is. I mean, is this film or character or what?
Whatever. Do you have a favourite? Favourite something.
Well, I mean, everyone's favourite villain is Loki. That's because he's the one that's interesting. That was the other thing that was Marvel thing was like they had a villain, but if it's quite often just a villain of one film, you're like, oh, that guy's dealt with. And Loki, I think, was the main one who actually kind of was a character rather than being. A set of obstacles with personality. Well, I suppose Thanos comes into that. But again, Thanos didn't have like a lot of characters in it. It's like, he's big and awful. But yeah, so I feel like Loki, as many people did. Although again, I feel like it kind of they didn't use him so much. Although there's going to be a TV series or something, isn't there? So that's going to be more interesting. I mean, you do quite have to like Steve Rogers, don't you? I also really like Peggy Carter, though a lot of that's a TV show, but she was also quite impressive because, again, bear in mind it took ages before you had a particularly female featured film. Because, I mean, like, Winter Soldier had Black Widow in a lot. It wasn't a Black Widow film. I know they're doing one, but, like, we know she's not around anymore, so they should have done that, like, several years ago. Yeah. Oh, I really liked Captain Marvel, which again was kind of the first actual like named character as a woman. Although again, I felt like she didn't get used as much in Infinity War as she thought she would, because they kind of introduced her as like, oh, she's really powerful, and it's like she didn't really do much. But I think the thing is with the overall arc is it kind of became, particularly after Civil War, it's about like Steve and Tony and their mates, which is what we were worried about with Tony and Avengers, and then kind of became the whole thing. But I don't know, there's just a lot of good stuff, like the Spider-Man films were pretty good. But yeah, and I think also some of the villains, even if they're just one film ones, were a bit more. And then also the way they introduced some characters like as like a secondary character in somebody else's film, and then they got their own one, like with Black Panther, Spider-Man. Yeah, I think that's where Civil War was better, because like they introduced a lot of people who then stuck around. It's a little bit more interesting than Ultron.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's difficult to pick a favourite because
there's just so much.
There is so much to it, but it's all
also kind of the same.
Yeah. So I mean,
I think it's good that they, like, it did seem like it took a while for them to, like, they had female characters and African American characters early on, and like the Falcon, Sam's the new Captain America, so that's good, and like Rhodey was in it.
I think
it's like it's taken off them to get the films, and then also like the LGBTQ representation is a bit like it's like, oh, there was a man in a support group who was played by basically the director or something, who said he'd been on a date with another man, and Captain America didn't make a comment. I'm like, that's not quite representative. That's very backgroundy, but yeah. So there's still room for them to improve.
There is definitely room for them to improve.
Also, there's a lot of focus on US military in some of the things, which is, but some of the US military pays a lot of money for films to happen.
Yeah, they do.
So
I think it's such a big, I say, groundbreaking, and I mean, obviously other companies have tried to do similar and have not managed to get anywhere near the successful.
At one point, I seem to recall we're all going, well, whose thing's going to be better, the way Marvel are doing it, or DC are going to do like one film and everyone splits off of that, and it's like, it did not work. You needed to do it on television. Well, see, DC wins television, Marvel wins films. Even though I like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Unfortunately, Marvel just ceded the entire TV bit. They tend to do the cartoons, just lots of, which is fine. Yeah, keep with the, So I mean, if we need to sit down and watch them all again, because I don't know when. Aspirational. Yeah, well, okay. Your aspiration is to spend many, many hours watching films we've already seen. But sure. Okay, yes. We're parents, we have full-time jobs, so... Yeah. So if you have an opportunity, definitely watch them. They are very good.
I think a lot of people who are watching this might already have seen them.
Yeah, well, I just thought I'd get in there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
There are definite highlights to, there's a couple you could skip, but even afterwards, actually, once you've watched I would have said, if I said up until about the last couple of films, you could have skipped Thor: The Dark World. Can't skip Thor: The Dark World.
You tried to skip Iron Man 2 and people insisted you did not do that. The year after, when was it before Avengers came out, or was it after? We did a New Year's thing where we basically showed like all of Phase 1. I'm not sure how all the phases work. They sometimes feel a bit random.
No,
and then Dave was going to be like, oh, we'll just skip Iron Man 2. And I was like, no, you still need to have Iron Man 2. And actually, in fairness, there was some stuff in that was relevant. It's just the one you were least fond of.
Yeah.
Despite there being Zoom cars in it.
I mean, it does have... it is a bit in Monaco, but during the Grand Prix, but it's not actually the Grand Prix.
Okay.
They're not Formula 1 cars. GP2 cars, perhaps.
Okay.
And you wouldn't have, and they wouldn't think you. Tony Stark just can't rock up and get in a. Anyway.
Well, I also feel like Bruce Wayne can't just take a whole world-leading ballet group to a yacht, but that was also in a film. No one complained. So.
Anyway. So yes.
Do you have a favourite what's it? Because you said you were thinking of your answer.
I don't really. Yeah, no, I think I'm being generally waffling and saying no.
Sure.
I think that there's definitely there's many good bits for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. There's some stuff that could be better, but that's always true.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, was there any difference when it got like taken over by Disney? I don't recall.
I don't feel there is.
No,
it might come. You might see it later with the later ones. So
the mouse owns everything.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I mean, obviously there's the Black Widow film to come out, which we presume kind of stands on its own, but who knows, you know. And then the promise of some other films. So
I've not been paying a lot of attention. Love and Thunder.
Yeah, a Thor film with Natalie Portman returning as Thor.
Well, that'll be good. Should get something to do because they only gave us so much to do in the other film.
Based off one of the more recent runs, quite good runs of. I haven't read it, but I've heard good things about it.
Or in the comics.
Yeah. Then another Guardians of the Galaxy film, but that won't happen until after James Gunn finished wrapping up Suicide Squad.
Oh, okay.
What else is there? Another Doctor Strange one.
It's going to be another Captain Marvel one.
Another Captain Marvel one.
Okay. But that sounds good. I'm not so sure about Doctor Strange. That was weird because she spent a while getting used to Benedict Cumberbatch sounding American, and then he was just like generally a bit arrogant and unpleasant. It's like, well, I've already seen him do this in Sherlock. Also, was that during? No, it was just towards the end of the phase where he was basically in everything for a while. And you're like, oh, it's this guy again. But not that that's his fault. It was alright. It was just a bit like, oh wow.
And there's a couple of the Eternals film. I don't know what that's going to be like. But, so yeah, there's a few more coming.
Oh, okay.
Be interesting. I don't know what they're working towards. If they are working towards anything at the moment, as it's sort of, you kind of got the once you've got Avengers out of the way, you kind of knew that they were working towards Infinity War, but now they might just be telling stories, which is fine.
Yeah.
I think they've got a big enough world now to start telling stories.
I think so. I think Infinity War was interesting because obviously they had quite the bold thing where they did have everything go literally wrong and awful, but then it feels like they've not entirely. I mean, obviously the point was they kind of reset button it, but they didn't completely reset button it. Like it had time travel, but not we're undoing stuff, but we're just trying to change a thing. But no, we're trying to change a thing in the present rather than making it not having happened in the past. But it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like there could be more stuff. They kind of touched on it a bit in Spider-Man: Far From Home, didn't they? But yeah, I guess we'll see about.
Our
that.
research assistant has helped us, has supported us. Black Widow, Eternals, Shang-Chi.
I don't know what that is.
It's not Iron Fist, but it's
like a martial arts one.
Thor,
okay.
Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange 2, Black Panther 2,
Okay,
Captain Marvel 2.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know.
Oh, and the third Spider-Man film, which they have spoiled the title for.
Does that have the word home in it?
Quite likely, actually.
I think I saw somebody say something about it, but you're like, is this only being sarky or is this actually a thing?
I think they do. So yeah.
I've been very busy, I've not been keeping up with this stuff.
It's fair enough. So yes, Marvel films. Marvel Cinematic Universe.
We will probably at some point actually do a bit more of a thing on for Captain America or stuff like that, which might be better organised because I will presumably be less tired. But yes, we will do that another time. We won't do it next. We'd like to try and mix this up a little bit in what medium and thing we're talking about. Do we want to do another one next week or
watch this space?
The government doesn't.
I think watch this space. We're
upend the work of the whole sector.
We are both in a whole So watch this space.
It's 2020. Everyone knows. You get it. Like things are crazy, and sometimes people are tired, and what's happening.
So yeah, I have finished the right leg. Look at it. Look at it. It's glorious red chunkiness. It's got vernier thrusters at the bottom. It's
That doesn't
very
look a bit
bendy.
like flares.
Look how bendy it is. Look how bendy it is.
Is that like the knee?
Yes.
It's very pointy.
It is. It is. It's an awesome right leg.
Okay. I've done most of the moon. It's a crescent moon. Oh, that's the angle you need to have out. Yeah, I've done most of the moon, just the bottom bit. This actually hasn't been too tricky because I've not done this much before, and doing kind of back stitch that's quite sort of neat at the front. I probably do need to go around the edge again because I kind of did the edge first, but we're still figuring out how that worked. But yeah, I'll keep working on this.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you for sticking with us.
Yes, thank you.
Especially during our rambling.
That's kind of what you need to be coming for at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. One day we started with a plan, and then we
we did have a plan, but
we'll get better at this.
Probably, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. We do this for fun, really. So yeah, if you want to catch up with any of the previous ones, check out our YouTube page. I'll link it somewhere. Or our previous one, and this one will go up there, so you can watch back. Or if you want to laugh at me again, I don't know, something. Other than that, stay safe. Have a good bank holiday.
Yeah.
Don't drink bleach.
Okay.
Too many Americans are doing that at the moment.
All right. Okay. I didn't know people were actually doing it.
Yeah,
just saying it was fine to say.
About 40 people in America have been hospitalised for it.
Okay. Well, yes. And you sort of think at least we're not as bad, but it's a low bar.
It is a
low bar. So yes, stay safe, particularly if you're in America, I guess, or anywhere really. But yes. So stay safe, and thank you for watching, and we will see you again. Bye bye.
The buttons disappeared. See, this gets edited out in the YouTube ones.
Okay. You can't find the button. Isn't it usually in the middle? Mm-hmm.
Now I've just switched the camera.
That's Mark's